are live. Thank you very much. Welcome to the meeting of the employment panel. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. To ensure the recording quality is maintained, please keep background noise to a quiet and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Thank you. I will now formally open the meeting. The first item on the agenda is to receive any apologies. Everybody is present, so that does not apply. Item 2 is name substitutes, that doesn't apply. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest in respect of Schedule 1, Schedule 2, or other interests from members of the panel in respect of items on the agenda. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2, or other interest for items on the agenda today? I see none. Item 4, minutes. To approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on 12th of May 2021. Only matters of accuracy may be discussed. No matters of accuracy have been notified, so I will ask the panel members to confirm that they agree the minutes. Are all panel members in favour? Aye. Thank you. Questions from members of the public? There have been no questions received. Item 6, questions from councillors, and no questions have been received either. So the main item on the agenda is item 7, the appointment of corporate directors and Director of Public Health. A supplement was published on the 5th of August 2021, which amended the purpose of the report, so that it now reads: to agree the recruitment process for Corporate Director Children and Young People, Corporate Director of Community Wellbeing, Corporate Director Economy and Environment, and Director of Public Health. So if I may, I'll pass it over to the Assistant Director People for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, the Council has a number of senior roles being filled on a temporary or interim basis. Since starting in post in May, the Chief Executive has taken the opportunity of having a number of vacancies to review the senior manager structure, and he is currently consulting with Management Board about a number of changes he's proposing to make. Consideration has been given to reducing the corporate director roles to 2, by joining adults and children's portfolios together to create a people directorate. This is a model which, given considerable crossover between the portfolios, works well in many organisations. However, given the intensity of the improvement work underway in children's, at the moment it was determined that now isn't the right time to risk diluting that leadership and management focus on children's. The report therefore sets out proposals to recruit to 3 posts in the new structure. They are the Corporate Director of Community Wellbeing, Corporate Director for Children and Young People, and the Corporate Director of Public Health. And as the leader mentioned in his introduction, since publishing the report, a further vacancy has arisen. An amendment was published on Thursday, the 5th of August, to include the recruitment of the post, the Corporate Director for Economy and Environment. So that's 4 posts we need to recruit to. And shortlisting and interviewing for these posts is reserved to an employment panel in the Council's constitution, which is why this proposal is being brought here today to discuss. There's one distinction to note, and that is when recruiting to the Director of Public Health. There is a requirement that the Regional Director for Public Health England jointly participates in that recruitment process. I'd just like to flag, I think, that recruiting good candidates to these roles will be challenging. The recruitment market is particularly difficult at the moment, and I think relying on a national advert just to attract candidates is not likely to be successful. So the report recommends that we do hire a specialist recruitment agency or agencies to help headhunt a field of candidates. And then I think the last thing I'd just like to flag is that recruiting to 4 posts will be an intense piece of work and will make demands on all of our diaries. And my plan will be to work with Democratic Services to make sure that we schedule that time ahead as far as possible. In the report, I've included an indicative timetable, but that may change. We will aim to balance the need to get on and fill these posts at pace, but we won't move so quickly that will jeopardise the search and not give it sufficient time. And I think whichever agency we engage, they will have a view about our timetable, and it's at that point we'll be able to confirm the timeframes in which we're operating.
Thank you, Tracy. So I'll pass over to anybody who's got any questions, observations about the future structure or maybe the recruitment process. Councillor Johnson.
Just one, Chairman. I understand and agree with the comments from Tracy about keeping children separate from adults because of the present circumstances. She did open her comments on that part of her introduction by saying that it's not, I think, not uncommon, or there are authorities that do combine them. Is it the view of this body that at some time in the future we may also give consideration to combining those two? Because there will come a day, please God, when we've gotten through the problem with children and the supervision and so on. So in normal circumstances, am I to assume that we would attempt to combine those two?
If I may, I think Tracy's right. In a number of local authorities that do have combined as a people in the People's Directorate, but there's probably equally as many that keep them separate. I think it's about circumstances and context at the time and the opportunities that present themselves. But where we are now, it's right that we separate capacity and expertise in the areas that we have. And let's see how we go into the future. That may well be an opportunity that comes around in the future. And the opportunity will be a decision as to whether we continue to keep them separate and enjoy the continued improvements. Or there is an opportunity to bring together and maximise the interrelationships and links that exist. I think that's very much into the future, but something the council will want to consider, whether that's 3, 4 or 5 years ahead.
Thank you, Chief Executive. And I take it from what you just said that this would not be a subject that we would discuss with prospective candidates or prospective employees for this position. So somebody going for this one will be given the information, and it will be reasonable for him or her to assume that this is a permanent position.
I think that's absolutely right by way of a clear position. Otherwise, it'll be potentially more unsettling when we want to recruit, high-performing corporate directors for both children and young people, and in community wellbeing. I mean, they will know that those opportunities exist in other places. I think what presents itself now is an exciting opportunity for someone to come make their mark, lead and deliver improvements that are needed across children's. And I think, to be fair, at the same time, deliver a slightly different community wellbeing perspective with a much sharper focus on our relationship and engagement with local communities and the interrelationship of public health within that. So there's a different dimension to that role.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you, Chairman.
I just wonder whether anybody else has a question on that sort of theme or different things. Councillor James.
Yeah, I'd caution against that. Let us hope that there are going to be improvements in this, but to be confident enough to do what you're proposing, and I don't know that would be the wisest thing in the long term, because we've been down the road of improvements, so-called, we're on the road to improvement, only to go backwards shortly afterwards. So, the thinking has been for over 20 years that you separate children's service. In fact, it was legislated. I'm surprised that when did the legislation change that you could merge the two back? Because in the early Labour government, following the Clambier case, the government decided that it was too important to keep the two together, that was a hindrance on providing the, whether it's right or not, I don't know. Well, I have an opinion that it was important that they were separated, and they legislated that you could not merge the two.
What would you want to,
I'm not sure when the legislation changed. I do know from an Ofsted perspective, they frown upon the integrating adults and children, not just because they want a purist approach, but they recognise the different needs are of children and young people.
It was controversial at the time when about 1999, I should think, the separation came, and you had to appoint a separate director.
Councillor Harley?
Yes, thank you. I must say that having been elected on a ticket of pushing for a family-centred approach to social care, I like the notion of a People's Directorate. We have seen persistent silo working within the directorates in Herefordshire, and despite every encouragement, things have happened in a very siloed fashion. We have had separate directors for a long time, and look at the mess we're in with children's. It's about picking the right people to lead. I absolutely recognise that we have had strong and sort of good leadership in the Communities Directorate, and it would be deeply unfortunate to destabilise that directorate by combining it with one that has as many issues to address as Children's Directorate does at the moment. But I'm really keen for assurance that the working across the child-adult boundary and the working with families on both sides of that boundary is improved to the point where, as far as the user experience is concerned, they don't see that there's any difference, that there's any line that they're stepping over between one and the other. I mean, we had the Youth Justice Plan come to Children's Scrutiny last week, and there are every year I can remember commenting on that and being concerned about the cut-off of not being able to see the young person to adult transition there, because we have young people who begin to offend late in Herefordshire. And when it comes to statistics to do with second offences or repeat offences, you can't see because they're young adults by that point. Plus, they're reporting 18 months behind where we are now, so you can never get a true picture of what's actually going on. But I really like the notion of a People's Directorate, and clearly anybody fulfilling that director role would be responsible for a massive section of the council's total responsibilities. So presumably that would be reflected in the post that was advertised for. Reluctantly, I can see the sense of keeping them separate at the moment. I think it's a huge opportunity that we have in terms of being able to recruit across all three director posts and public health, which is a really important role that straddles social care and into our health service partners' areas of working. It's exciting and challenging, I think, for us. We have to get those appointments right, because we've seen very clearly what's happened when we've got them wrong. We need to make every effort to get a really good field of candidates. So again, I'm very supportive of us using consultants and headhunters to go out there and try and find people whose skills, career paths and, attitudes match the demands of the role here. We are a small authority, but we're pregnant with both opportunities and challenges.
Thank you. I wonder, Tracy, whether you wanted to comment about the recruitment process. So, as Harvey was mentioning, various aspects of the successful candidate, we hope. How do we attract that through the recruitment process? Maybe we're getting into detail a bit too much, but just some comments on how we recruit when we have that sort of direction we want to go in.
I think it would be helpful if we spent some time with the agencies making sure we properly brief them so they are absolutely clear what we're looking for and what fits with our values and behaviours. But we need to spend some time up front with the agencies, and then it's going to be a headhunting exercise, and advert is not going to bring us what we want here. I know I mentioned that earlier, but I can't understate how important that headhunt exercise is going to be. And then it's just making sure that we've got enough time to make the right decision and that we don't feel rushed. I don't want us jamming our day full of candidates back to back. I want us to have some thinking time and that we see the candidates in a range of situations if that's what works for us. 45 minutes of FaceTime on a screen, it's not going to work for us, I don't think. I don't know if anybody disagrees.
No.
Okay.
Councillor Chance.
Thanks. Is it helpful if I put the mic on for the broadcast or whatever? Okay. So 3 points or questions. So the first one is about this kind of recruitment process. It just strikes me that there's a real opportunity, as Liz has said, in recruiting the 3 kind of members of the senior management team along with board all at the same time. And I really hope that the recruitment process will include some element that enables us to see how people work together, because these people are not just directors of their individual units, their individual directorates, they are people who will jointly share responsibility for the direction of the organisation as a whole. And we have a fantastic opportunity here to make sure that we get a unit that works as a team. And I think that can help address some of the concerns that have been raised about potentially silo working, really making sure that we recruit a team right at the beginning. I take account of the points that Liz made there about opportunities for kind of close working, but my sense of it is that the issues that we see, particularly in children's directorate, are not, the relationship with adults is not the key thing that has gone wrong there by any means. So for me, it makes sense to have 2 separate directors for children and adults at this point. So Tracy, if you could respond specifically on that element of the recruitment process, that was just my first point. My second one is about the long listing process. So as employment panel, we'll look at a shortlist. How short will the shortlist be? How long do you anticipate the long list to be? If it's only, can we get a sense of the numbers? When we recruited for the chief executive post, I think we looked at least 15, something like that. So I think it would be useful to think about, it would be useful to have clarification on that. My last point, perhaps Paul, you could respond on this. So Para 7 refers to the appointment of a director of transformation on a kind of short-term contract, and it shows in the organogram as well. As far as I can see in the report, there isn't any role for employment panel with that role. That is a key role. So I'm wondering if there could or should be any role for employment panel with appointment of that post, notwithstanding that it is only for about 18 months. And perhaps you could just elaborate a bit more on the appointment process for that, because it is very significant. It's at the same level of seniority, and that process doesn't have the same degree of clarity that we have over the appointment of the 3 permanent directors. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely take your point about the directors working together as a team. My hope would be that we're able to give this piece of work to 1 agency, but I have referred to the fact there might be 2. And that for me is that the Director of Public Health might go to a different agency, because that is just such a specialist role to recruit to. But yet my expectation would be that one agency would take the job of recruiting to those 3 directors, and we could look at them together, and it absolutely fits with what the chief executive is setting out in terms of a corporate leadership team. So completely agree with your comments there. Would like to see them together. And then
With some sort of recruitment exercise that looks at how they work together and communicate and so forth, perhaps.
if we can make it so, I think that would be perfect. It would be absolutely ideal for us if we can make that, if we can make it work logistically.
Yeah. It's such a significant recruitment process. It's really worth investing in that process at the start, isn't it?
And it is an investment, yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of the long list shortlist, how we've worked this before is the long listing is more of a technical process of weeding out candidates who are not qualified rather than not fitting. And the way I've worked it in the past, if employment panel are happy with this, is that we will weed out the long list candidates with the agency, but we will always make sure that you have sight of those candidates in terms of just their names or potentially their short brief. So you'll see who has been removed from the process at that stage, and then that would give you a final opportunity to bring them back in if that's what you need to do.
I think the key thing is to see why they've been removed. Yeah.
Normally it's absolutely self-evident,
Yes,
so
right.
yeah. But if you're comfortable with that process, that's what we've used in the past. I suppose it saves a bit of time for this panel.
And the director of transformation. That's the third question.
Yeah, and it is a key and integral part of the proposal going forward. We're uniquely placed in terms of 3 corporate director vacancies to get that right, to bring forward a strong corporate centre around legal and governance, resources and assurance, and HR, for which we need considerable investment. And almost a third strand of that is around transformation. There has been a transformation programme across the council, but heavily focused in one particular around adults and communities. Some involvement, albeit limited, in children's, and I think, to be fair, little or no involvement across the economy in place for different reasons. So this is about a director who's got, proven experience to deliver that across the piece. And at this stage, I've indicated to Councillor Harvey about an involvement in that recruitment process. We are long listing some candidates this week. If those candidates are felt suitable, I have contacted Councillor Harvey about being involved in that process. There's a further briefing to be done, to be fair, but I have recognised the importance of involving a representative of the employment panel in that process, and at this stage have reached out for Councillor Harvey to join that process. Happy to talk about that and open that up, but I wouldn't want you to think that it's just been done by officers alone. It will have a representative from the employment panel as part of that process, and I had a similar discussion with the leaders as also being part of that process if it was appropriate.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it is my feeling that it shouldn't just be an officer decision. Yep. So, presumably you've approached Councillor Harvey with her kind of corporate.
Yes, it was in terms of a cabinet member role, in terms of having a lead for transformation. It was as simple as that.
And Councillor Hitchener, you would tell you to have some involvement in this process as well.
I've called upon to do so. Councillor James.
Yeah, two things. First one, the consultants. I wasn't over impressed with the last consultants. Some of the questions were asked about councils on the background. I can't remember who the individual was now. I was surprised at the relative lack of knowledge. I'm sure they do, or perhaps it was the individuals we were speaking to. I'm sure the chief executive would say, "Oh, they were a wonderful firm."
I do have my own comments about them. I've given my feedback.
But I'm sure you've had experience of other consultants. I do caution, we need really the best for this, who have a broader knowledge, perhaps some instances. I do know my son-in-law was in business, he was a director of Hayes. But it's a long time ago. But it's a big job doing all these at the same time, and unless you've got a large consultancy, I think your knowledge can be a little bit weak on that. The other thing is the involvement of the within the health, public health. We had experience of that many years ago where they took over the process, and we ended up with a duff appointment because it was to be frank, it was a friend of the regional director, and the council went along with it at the time. But that's by the by. But I mean, how much involvement will we have from them?
Yes, I think I've quite strong views about the agencies. So I don't know whether they're can be published.
And I have some fairly strong views, but I'll be mindful that I'm in a public arena now. And I will just say that we had a fairly difficult experience with the chief exec's recruitment where the lead consultant left midway through, which we tried to protect the candidates from. But it was a fairly difficult experience. That's the first for me. And we'll all form our views about whether that's acceptable or not. But we plan to run a procurement on our portal, and we'll let companies bid for the work because it's a really big, important piece of work. This isn't one just to fish somebody out of the internet.
I'm comfortable with it.
So we'll do that. And then just in response to Public Health England, I think we've done quite a bit of work with Public Health England recently, and I think we've learned to work better together. Ultimately, the Faculty of Public Health have to determine whether or not a candidate is competent, and to do that they have to be part of the recruitment process. And I would imagine it would be better if in the past we've done that as a single process when we've had this extraordinarily long recruitment panel of, I think, in excess of 12 people sat on a panel, which just does not work. So I think we'll run it this time as a two-stage process, assess competence first, and then as an employment panel we can establish fit. Our main goal with that recruitment though is we need to attract candidates. It is such a challenging market during the pandemic.
Any further questions? Comments? Well, I propose bring the meeting to an end then. So I don't know whether
Do you have a
executive.
formal vote on the recommendations?
Yeah, I'm just going to look. Paul, do you want to have any final comments at all?
No, I think the ground has been cleared and the unique opportunity that we have. And I think Tracy's right. The members have pointed out, let's take the time to get this right and make sure we get the right appointments, both in terms of attracting good quality candidates from across the field and then making sure we have a good and proper look at them. And the strength of their technical strength and being able to lead a directorate is one thing. The second thing, and perhaps more importantly for me, is their ability to work across the council corporately and not see things as a single dimension, but see things as a whole council first. That's the principle.
And creating a new team, isn't it?
It is.
You're not coming
Yeah,
to a particular slot. It's three new people. How well are they going to work together? That's going to be a chance.
Yeah.
Talking about that being quite a challenge.
And it is, it's not, we should again see that as a single dimension. It's not just an officer team. It is a leadership team for the council as a whole, which is officers and members alike.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendations are first that recruitment for the corporate director, children and young people, corporate director, community wellbeing, corporate director, economy and environment, and director of public health is initiated in line with the estimated timescale scales set out in paragraph 12. And B, the employment panel endorses the recruitment plan and delegates long listing to the chief executive and assistant director of people. So I put those recommendations to you. All in favour? Very much unanimous. So I will close the meeting. If the live stream could be terminated, that would be good. Thank you.